New Hampshire's 1st congressional district is keeping us very busy here at WMUR, with more than half a dozen major candidates vying for the seat being vacated by Carol Shea Porter. Eddie Edwards, former police chief in Southampton and New Hampshire's former chief of liquor enforcement, was the first one in the race, and he joins us here today. Mr. Edwards, Chief.
Good morning, Adam.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
A few months back, when you were first on this program to declare your candidacy, everyone thought you'd be running eventually against Carol Shea Porter, and now that's off the table. How does this race change with her no longer in the picture?
Well, my message doesn't change. My message, as I announced in April, is the same. It's about integrity and character and bringing that back to Washington and bringing a voice that unites us, brings us back together as a country. So my message is the same, that I'm running to represent the people of CD1.
Yeah, nonetheless, you were preparing probably to take on a 10-year, on and off incumbent, and now it's wide open.
It's wide open, and this is why it's so exciting. The voters in Congressional District 1 will have options to choose from. And I believe my message of integrity and character is resonating with voters throughout the district. I'm getting very positive feedback as I travel to the district. Those are the things that are important to people. A voice that brings us back together. As you know, there's a lot of division in our country right now, and people are using politics to divide us. I think we have to get back to a place where we have a common shared belief in this country.
Your primary opponent in this race, State Senator Andy Sanborn, recently encountered some campaign turbulence, having admitted to using, quote, crass language in the presence of a Senate staffer a few years ago. This triggered an internal inquiry in the Senate and eventually resulted in the Senate hiring an outside firm to revamp its sexual harassment policies. Is this going to be a campaign issue?
It's going to be a part of a campaign issue for him, but it's not a campaign issue for me. I'm focused on integrity and character and bringing that back to Washington. That's something that Andy Sanborn will have to address and the voters will have to decide on. I want to give them something that's special. I want to give them something that they can once believe again in our politics and our character of the people they're electing.
Okay. I'm guessing you would have been an enthusiastic vote for the tax bill that just passed.
Absolutely.
And
very exciting time for us.
Yeah. But with this Republican momentum, where, if you were in Congress, would you want that momentum to go next? This is the first big legislative achievement of this Congress and this president. Where should they focus next in Congress?
Infrastructure. Infrastructure. We need to get back to a place where we're building up our country and not other countries. We have roads and bridges that need to be repaired. We have schools that are crumbling. We need to get back to building up America again.
Every Republican running in 2018 is going to have to figure out how they coexist with President Donald Trump. First, how do you coexist with President Donald Trump, and are there any areas where you disagree with the president?
Well, first of all, I'm focused on my race in CD1, but I'm also appreciative of the fact that the president won CD1. The voters in CD1 are embracing the president. They want that message. They wanted a president who would go to Washington to shake Washington up. They wanted someone who would go to Washington and hold politicians accountable on both sides of the aisle, and that's what the president has done. So where the president is right for CD1, I'm going to be lockstep with him. When there's a policy position that is wrong for the CD1 or this country, he's going to hear a strong advocacy for our district. But right now, the president is in lockstep with CD1.
So right now, you don't see any issues where you're in disagreement with the president?
I'm not focused on disagreements. That's what I mean. I want to take positivity to Washington. I'm not interested in finding where I don't agree with people. I'm interested in finding places where I agree with people.
Speaking of that, you posted a very heartfelt video earlier this year after the events in Charlottesville, Virginia, talking about the divisions in our country, how to heal those, and also taking a fairly nuanced position on the Confederate monuments issue. You grew up around those monuments in the South. Why is it that you don't think that, why should this country continue to honor in some way these generals who literally would have given their lives to perpetuate a system that existed on the evils of slavery?
Well, first of all, I think we have to step back and look at what happened, right? The Republican Party was formed in 1854 to free slaves, right? The Republican parties are the authors of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. I was very blessed in my life. I had a grandmother who taught me history, who taught me the love and appreciation for my country. That's why I love this country so much, because I'm not bound by the burdens of my father carries or my brother or people in my community. I'm bound by the love and appreciation for this country. So Georgia, where I grew up, Stone Mountain is the largest Confederate monument in the United States. I walked by that mountain with my grandmother. She held my hand. We walked around. She taught me about the history of our country. So I grew up with this enormous confidence that I could go wherever I wanted to, become wherever I wanted to become, as long as I worked hard and was held accountable for my decisions. And so that's why you find a 19-year-old kid here in New Hampshire. I came to a state that's 97% white. I made my way in the state, ultimately becoming the police chief in the state, and that's the power and beauty of this country. That we're not bound by our history. We have to learn from our history so that we work towards to form a more perfect union. It's what our founders talked about, and it's where we need to be.
What do you do? I mean, you mentioned the 97% white here. What do you do when you encounter racism in New Hampshire, even if it is just an insensitive comment?
I've done what I've done my whole life, recognizing that that's an individual person. It's not the entire group. I'll tell you a story. When I ran for state senate in 2014, I went around meeting different business people. I met a gentleman who said to me, he was a conservative person, said to me, "Where'd Obama out?" I said to him, "Well, I'm a conservative. I'm running as a conservative, and I'm not running for president." He said, "Well, we're Obama out." I knew what he meant by that, but I can't then take a posture that people are against me, everyone hates me. And I think that's the beauty of our country. We're in a great country where people want to unify us. But our politicians, they use our race, our gender, our sexual orientation, our economic status to divide us. We have to get back to a place where we all appreciate this country and we all are willing to do whatever we can to bring us together. But we don't see that every day in politics. And so I'm not going to spend my time worrying about who's going to dislike me because I'm black, who's going to dislike me because I was a police chief, who's going to dislike me because I was a veteran, who's going to dislike me because I'm involved in interracial marriage. I am not worried about those things, any more so than I'm worried about someone voting for me because I'm black. Those are wrong as well. We have to get back to a place where we appreciate American values. That's what I grew up with, and I'm very happy that I had a grandmother who instilled that in me.
Is the president making these divisions worse or better?
The president is one person. We live in a nation of 330 million people. I have a responsibility, you have a responsibility, we all have a responsibility to give back and work hard and bring us together. Not just the president. There are 535 people in Congress. They have their responsibility as well. And so it's easy to blame the president and say, well, you're causing this. No, he's not alone. He's not doing it alone. This requires unity. And I think that the president is speaking in a voice that is bringing people towards him. You know, as far as I know, I think the president received more black and Latino votes than prior Republican candidates. His voice is resonating with many people because I grew up in a time when my grandmother said to me, if you want something in life, work for it. I started buying my own school clothes at 12 years old, mowing lawns, picking up cans. Nothing in life is free. If you want something, work for it. And I think that's a value system that many of us appreciate. I know I do.
You served in the Navy. Recently, a person at a town hall asked you about military service, and you said you wouldn't be in opposition, essentially, to bringing back the draft. You didn't say you were going to run on this issue, but isn't conscription kind of an antiquated idea?
No. It is an antiquated idea. But I believe in some type of service. I'm not running on bringing back the draft, forcing people into the draft. That's not it at all. It came from a place of love and appreciation for this country. I just think that we all can give something to our nation, whether that's national service in some type of nonprofit, in the military, somewhere we can give back to our country. And when we all have a piece of ownership of this country, we feel like we're connected to this country, our country will lift itself. There's too much division now. And you see that because people aren't appreciative of what's happened in this nation. I go back to my upbringing, I go back to the values of this country, and they serve me well. I've never felt intimidated or misplaced. I've always felt like I belong because I believe I'm an American, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. I tell my children that. This is a country that's given a lot to all of us.
Our foremost public policy problem right now, the opioid crisis. In some ways, we're seeing on this tough uphill fight, feels like we're sliding back a little bit in some ways, given the problems at Serenity Place in Manchester just this last week, some of the information coming out of the CDC about life expectancy. You are a small government guy, but shouldn't the federal government be trying to step up and do more here? Well,
we should all be stepping up and doing more on this. Substance use disorder is something I spent my law enforcement career fighting and addressing that in a very serious way. We have a lot of families, a lot of business folks stepping up to fight this. And we're not going to resolve this with just a government program. We're going to resolve this as a country fighting and unified to find solutions where our young people don't feel they need to self-medicate, where people aren't depressed and they're self-medicating, and where our medical community takes an active role in making sure that we're prescribing medication in a responsible way. And we hold people accountable who are selling drugs in our street and making the problem worse. We can all do a little bit more. But it's not just a government solution. It's a community solution. And we're finding those unique community solutions here in New Hampshire. It's what we do best. We all believe in New Hampshire. Democrats, Republicans believe in a limited government. And so we want to make sure that we're bringing about solutions that will bring about real change and sustainable change. It's not going to be sustainable just with a government solution.
But you would advocate for more federal funding, just to be on the record?
Oh, absolutely. I would advocate that we spend our money appropriately and bring back our dollars here to New Hampshire so we can utilize those here in New Hampshire to treat some of these problems we're having.
Chief Eddie Edwards, thank you so much for joining us on this Christmas Eve morning.
Yes.
Hope you get everything under the tree that you want this Christmas.
I will. Just a little bit more time with my wife so we can bake some cookies.
All right. Thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it.